I'm Ellis Martin. Join me now for a conversation with Adam Smith, co-founder and vice president of business development for Oroco Resource Corp, a public mineral exploration company trading on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol OCO, and in the U.S. on the OTCQB market under the symbol ORRCF. Oroco is focused on the development of a large copper deposit in the Santo Tomas Project in coastal northwest Mexico. Santo Tomas hosts a multi-billion-pound copper resource defined by historical drilling and currently being confirmed by ongoing exploration drilling by Oroco. Copper mineralization at Santo Tomas is located at surface and therefore potentially amenable to low-cost mining methods. It's very well located with respect to the infrastructure that's essential to a large mining operation, and Mexico is among the world's top mining jurisdictions, with laws and trade agreements that protect the rights of mining companies. Since commencing exploration and resource definition at Santo Tomas 3 years ago, Oroco has made a series of rapid advances, and the year ahead is rich with catalysts, such as a formal resource definition and economic evaluation, each of which carries the possibility of a company valuation re-rating. These milestones will be achieved against the backdrop of a positive forecast for the price of copper, possibly to historical highs, as a result of dramatic shifts in metal's importance to industrial and consumer markets. Here's Adam to tell us about Oroco and these shifts in copper markets. Adam, welcome back to the program. Nice to visit with you today.
Thank you, Ellis. Always good to speak to you.
News just released, you've drilled 187.9 meters of 0.58% copper equivalent at Santo Tomas. Now, that's a good spread of consistent copper grade.
Correct, Ellis. And what makes this news release, this drill result, even more significant, it's at the southernmost extreme of the area drilled at Santo Tomas. It is approximately 5 kilometers south of the northernmost drill hole and 8 kilometers south of the extent of known mineralization at Santo Tomas. That's almost 5 miles of nearly continuous mineralization at Santo Tomas that is now drill tested. The other significant thing about that intersection is its grade. Its grade and the style of mineralization suggests to our geologists that the so-called South Zone, which was the subject of that news release, mineralization at the South Zone is the result of not just a single mineralizing event, a hydrothermal event over millions of years that deposited mineralization, but as a result of multiple mineralizing events, giving the South Zone and the newly discovered southern edge of the South Zone the potential for higher grades across greater widths in slightly different styles than the rest of the area. So for a deposit where drilling commenced in the 1970s and has continued up to today, to find new discoveries, new levels of mineralization is very exciting. And it suggests to us that even though we're ending the first phase of drilling at Santo Tomas, we're ending on a high note, the kind of high note in all 3 zones of Santo Tomas, the South Zone, the North Zone, and Brasilis, that has us very, very keen to get drills turning again in a second phase of drilling.
So as we used to say in the music industry, this is not just a one-hole or a one-hit wonder, is it?
We have, in fact, drilled over 70 holes at Santo Tomas in a program that started a year and a half ago, and all but a very few of those holes have hit mineralization. They've hit mineralization, as I mentioned before, across great distances, 5 kilometers north to south, at depths up to 700 meters below the surface, and across widths of 200 or 300 meters. So that's a great deal of tonnage that has been defined by the Phase 1 at Santo Tomas, and drilling at each of the 3 zones at Santo Tomas, the North Zone, the South Zone, and Brasilis, suggests that additional Phase 2 drilling is warranted as the deposit is open to expansion at all 3 of those zones.
So what was the goal in the first phase here, Adam?
The goal of the first phase of drilling was not to be exhaustive in terms of the exploration and development of a resource at Santo Tomas, but simply to meet certain thresholds. In this case, the threshold that we sought was the recreation, repetition, if you will, of historical drilling at Santo Tomas that demonstrated nearly a 1 billion ton resource capable of supporting a mine operating at a very high level with revenues at today's copper prices over $1 billion a year, and do so for greater than 20 years. That was the historically defined resource that we were seeking to confirm and expand upon in Phase 1 drilling. We feel that when we conduct a preliminary economic assessment of a mining activity at Santo Tomas, a study that talks about capital costs and revenues and has a discounted future cash flow number called a net present value that sets the value for an asset like this, we felt that defining 2 decades of mine life was an important threshold. We feel that this phase of drilling has largely confirmed the historical results. We found mineralization exactly where we would expect it to be based on historical drilling, and we've drilled and defined new zones of mineralization well outside of those areas that were historically defined. So phase one, we feel, and we won't know until the resource estimate is complete later this quarter, but we do feel, and it has the look of a program that has largely met its objectives. Subsequent drilling at Santo Tomas will seek to further refine the portion of the deposit that is included in the economic assessment as we take those economic studies to higher levels, such as a pre-feasibility study, which is a higher level study in which engineers have a higher degree of confidence. But we're not going to resist the allure of continuing to expand Santo Tomas as it appears to be possible in each of the three zones, the South Zone, the North Zone, and Brasiles. And in fact, further north from those holes that we've drilled at Brasiles, across several kilometers of potential mineralization contained on our mineral concessions that take us all the way up to the Barachi deposit, another large copper deposit owned by a Chinese major mining company.
In this day and age, I'd like to focus on the impact upon the community in an area like Sinaloa and Mexico, for that matter. But let's say potential minimum of $20 billion worth of revenue over 20 years. That's quite significant with the jobs in the area, not just for Sinaloa, but for the entire country of Mexico, which really could change the economics of the country itself. It can be an abundant country, and people want to stay there and work, actually.
Santo Tomas is contained within an area called La Entrada al Pacifico, the Pacific Gateway. It's a multimodal trade and transport corridor developed jointly by the Mexican and U.S. governments. There's a railway, there's a high-pressure gas pipeline, there's a deep-water port, a nitrogen fertilizer plant to be fed by that natural gas pipeline is being built. It's an area designed for large infrastructure projects and large industrial projects such as Santo Tomas. It would be among the biggest taxpayers in the state and indeed among the biggest taxpayers in the country. So yes, it's got the potential to change for the better the immediate area, which is a ranching and mining district, but also has broad and positive implications for the state and the country in general. We're very aware of that fact. We have started working with the community many, many years ago. In fact, we started working with the community years before we commenced exploration at Santo Tomas. We're aware of the positive transformation that a mine like Santo Tomas can bring to that region. We're very proud of the work that we do there, and we're very hopeful that one day, as Santo Tomas is developed, it will have a very positive impact on the surrounding area.
Adam, we've certainly had a great deal of response from our last interview. You absolutely covered the reason for copper and what you're doing there in Mexico, and I'm quite proud to have you as a sponsor of this particular radio program and podcast. What have we got coming in the next few months that we can sort of tease?
Being able to follow up on our first interview with the type of news that we issued this week, I think was very fortunate. First, we were able to introduce Santo Tomas to your listeners and very quickly follow up with terrific news of the expansion of mineralization at Santo Tomas. In the coming months, the first phase of drilling will be complete. That data will be compiled into a mineral resource estimate, and that mineral resource estimate will be combined with additional information like metallurgy and mine design, infrastructure costs, etc., into a preliminary economic assessment. Those two studies will define Santo Tomas in compliant terms, compliant under current mineral reporting standards. And those compliant studies will really establish Santo Tomas for the benefit of investors who want to be able to value the project.
Adam, it's always great to catch up with you. Thanks so much for joining me today on the program, and pay attention. There's more coming.
Thank you, Ellis.
I've been speaking with Adam Smith, co-founder and vice president of business development for Oroco Resource Corp. Oroco trades on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol OCO, and in the U.S. on the OTCQB market under the ticker symbol ORRCF. Go to the company's website, OrocoResourceCorp.com. For Adam Smith and Oroco Resource Corp, I'm Ellis Martin.
Would you like to be one of the first to see who we are following? Subscribe to our audio newsletter. It's free. EllisMartinReport.com.